poured the wrath of His Son on you. Romans 5:8. But God displayed, He commendeth, He put on display His love toward you, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That is the display of His love. God did something. Your love to others must have no hypocrisy, verse number 9, no fakeness. Think of each of your relationships, I would ask you right now, with people. How many of them have something hypocritical involved, something tainted, something insincere, something wrong in the relationship between you and someone else? How many of them have something wrong, something strifeful, some bit of anger or offense never addressed that causes your love toward that person to be tainted and impure and in violation of verse number 9? Skewed in some way other than pure love in every relationship that you have. Love that is not wholehearted and pure between you and someone else is dissimulated. It is verse 9. It is hypocritical love. How are you, Becky? You look so good in that dress. While you're thinking, I can't believe what she said about my daughter. She has issues. All for the courage of God. It would be really funny if it was not so true about you and me. We are two personalities in our love often towards people, and that's sinning against verse number 9. All for the courage of God's people to have the pure love that God commands us, that gives honest effort to make every issue right between us and other people that is hanging unaddressed. Every bit of dissimulation, every bit of hypocrisy, every bit of tainted insincerity that is not right between you and somebody else, for you to make it right. Oh, for the courage to have pure love towards people. Matthew 18, going to people, is still in the Bible. And it is always right no matter what the result is. Did you hear that? Going to people if things aren't right between you and them is Matthew 18, and it is always right no matter how you'll be received or no matter if it'll solve it or not. At least you did your part. At least you tried. At least your love on your side was sincere without hypocrisy. It's always right. All for the courage of God's people to do Matthew 18. Not to have hypocritical love between you and somebody else. See also, pure love has no stains in it that are left unclean. Hypocritical love allows no grudges. Hypocritical love has grudges. Pure love allows no grudges between you and another. Pure love confronts until everything is all right again, or at least you've made the attempt. Pure love also will not let someone you know ruin their life without getting involved. You say, my friend, that you love another friend, and yet you see them damaging their life greatly, and you say nothing, and you're silent. What kind of love is this? You see some of the great commands of the Bible. You see some of the great warnings and judgments of the Bible. Do you know that's just the wonderful love of God that is keeping a person from damning themselves? You know, if you really love somebody, you go and tell them, hey, you're messing up your life. You're in danger. If you really would show verse 9 kind of love that didn't have hypocrisy, you wouldn't just know that somebody was doing something that was very wrong without opening up your mouth in a very loving way, in a very humble way, and going to them. Oh, you don't know what they would say. They would get all mad at me, and they would turn, probably yes at first. Probably yes at first. So I got it. It's just more loving just not to say anything, let them ruin their life. Yeah, that's much better, isn't it? Of course, I'm being silly. True love would try to rescue someone from a dark path, some sin they are following, some terrible decision they're about to make. True love speaks up. Doesn't have hypocrisy in it. It doesn't say, oh, man, I hope you're doing well. Hope everything is good. In the mind, you're thinking, this person's blowing their life. This person is destroying their life. Notice the two phrases that follow. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good in verse number 9. Abhor, hate it. We know from the phrases before, notice it's talking the phrase before, love, be without hypocrisy, dissimulation. And the verse after this phrase, be kindly affectionate one to another. This stuck in the middle. It's not machine gun, it's connected. It's not popcorn that's disconnected. Abhor that which is evil is talking about relationships. And cleave to that which is good is talking about in your relationships. I've heard it quote out of context many times. It's talking in the context here of how we are relating and loving other people. Took me a while to understand the connection with pure love in the first phrase, abhorring evil and cleaving to good in the second. It's talking about hating every evil thing between you and somebody else. Connected to the dissimulation in the first verse, the hypocrisy. And cleaving to every good thing in the way that you love other people. Hating that there's anything that is not right in the way you're loving somebody else. Cleaving to everything that is good in the way that you are treating somebody else. This terminology between pure love that has no evil and does only good to others is a doctrine of love. I want to pause here. I want to stop. If you're not awake, smack yourself. Everyone looks awake. I'm just telling you, you got to get this point. When I first saw this, I thought, well, this is very odd. He's talking about good and evil in the way we love other people, and it's just kind of an odd way to say it. Until I started going to sister passages in other books of the Bible, of the New Testament, and I found that this idea is repeated over and over and over, that true love towards other people is when I take all the evil out of it, of the way that I relate to other people, of anything that is evil between me and somebody else, and I add in a bunch of good fruit. The good and the evil is mentioned over and over. Let me give you an illustration. You can jot it down if you want to. 1 Peter 1:22. Seeing ye have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit, listen, unto unfeigned, same word, dissimulation, undissimulated or unhypocritical love of the brethren, see that you love one another with a pure heart fervently. Did you hear that? Unfeigned love of the brethren. The exact same word for unfeigned and dissimulation in verse number 1. We are to love without any falseness or evil or anything wrong in between ourselves and others. See that we love one another with a pure heart fervently. Hey, listen, how are you loving other people right now? You say mostly. Not, okay, verse 9 is not mostly at all. It means take away all the evil, abhor anything evil between you and somebody else, that anything that exists between you and somebody else that is not perfectly pure. Cleave, glue yourself to that which is good in your relationship with you and somebody else. I do all right with loving others with an apathetic heart mediocrily, but that's not what the verse says. I'll say that again to wake you up. I do okay with loving other people with an apathetic heart mediocrity. But the verse that we just read was, love everyone with a pure heart fervently. That sounds kind of fanatical. I'm supposed to love others and put it all on the line? Yes. Yeah. Can I ask you if your love to others is pure and fervent without any evil, cleaving to only good in relationships between you and other people? We're to abhor anything evil between us and others, and cleaving and grasping only, you see what the word is, cleaving, grasping, gluing ourselves only to good between us and our brothers. Listen how the book of James also talks about this love doctrine that is without evil. It says in James 3, verse 16 and 17, for where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. I've been in churches like that, where there is envying and there's strife, and which equals evil work. It's the wrong kind of love. That's verse number 9, hypocritical love. But the wisdom, that is the wisdom in relationships that are from above, is first pure, then peaceable and gentle and easy to be entreaty and full of mercy and good, cleave to the good, good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. That is our word. The wisdom that God gives you about how to deal with that coworker, and specifically those in the church that maybe are sandpaper people, that are harder to get along with, you know, naturally, whatever, is that you would give only to them good fruits without any hypocrisy, and that you would refuse that there would be any evil between you and the other person, and you'll go to whatever lengths to make that happen. It's hard to just hear verses that I just quoted without seeing them. I found that in the preaching. When preachers quote verses, at least to me, maybe that's why God made me a preacher, because I just can't, my attention. Sometimes it goes over your head, but please understand from the two support passages in 1 Peter and James, they teach the same thing that is found in the last half of verse number 9 about pure love toward others. It must be absent from any evil work toward others and full of good fruit toward others. So what is evil in our relationships? Well, let's step on toes a minute. Partiality is evil. If I am partial to one person, preferential to one person, preferential treatment to some who are pretty and dress good and smart and rich, preferential treatment above those that are poor and rough and struggling people is evil. It is hypocritical love. It's easy for us to love some people and hard for us to love other people, isn't it? Isn't that true? You have to really struggle. So aren't we allowed to, we're Americans, veterans, we're allowed to love who we want and not love who we don't want to love, right? It's not exactly what James 2 says. Do you remember in James 2 when two people come into your church? One guy is dressed to the hilt, all right? And I mean, he's just really you want to get to know who he is. So, you and there's another guy. He's not dressed to the hilt. He's rough. He's rough. And you go over to Larry and say, hey, Larry, the ushers better watch that guy. Why? Because he just looks rough. Really? And the guy that's dressed really nice, you give him the best seat. This is James 2. This is straight out of the Bible. Okay, what is that? It is hypocritical love. If you are partial in your view of people and the way you treat other believers based on, something about them, that is not like the love of God. Now hone in. Hear me. Do you remember the verse I quoted? In Romans 5:8. But God commendeth His love toward us, and that when we were shiny and pretty, Christ died for us. No, the kind of love that God had from heaven, listen and hear sovereign, wonderful, wonderful love. It was that He found us when we were the most undesirable, His enemies and sinners. And He chose to love us. Love that was not reciprocating love. You weren't snuggly and you weren't desirable. The Bible says that we were sinners. We all are sinners and unrighteous. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Nothing desirable. He chooses to love you by decision, not by what He sees in you, so you go forward and have grace love to others. And stop loving other people based on decisions you're making about the way they look or the way they smell or the way they act or whatever. Have grace love like Jesus did when He died for you when you were a sinner. Grace love. Just like God. That doesn't evaluate, it rather decides to love over top of our faults. Wow. I pause a moment and tell you, I don't know everybody here. We have some visitors, and I'm glad that you're here. And we have some home folk that need to hear the same. The gospel needs to be preached to the home folk just like the people visiting. Do you hear the love of God towards yourself? All false religion preaches this. Do better, look better to God, and He might accept you. The truth of the gospel, the good news of the Bible says this. But God displayed, He commended His love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And so I tell you this, stop in attempts to clean up yourself to look right to God. God made a way for you to be perfectly forgiven. Every sin you've ever committed in your life or will commit, He laid on Jesus Christ and murdered and bled out His Son in His wrath for you instead of you. What kind of love is that? It's grace love. It's love that is not of this earth. It's love that did something that is unthinkable. And you say, well, how can I come to God then? By believing in what He did to Jesus for you. That He was dead and buried, and He rose again 3 days later, and that whole thing was a sacrifice